Hey guys, this is Sean. Just wanted to share one of the biggest questions that I get about terrariums is how do we know when it's time to water our terrarium? Well, I just want to show a few things for you guys to look at so you know when it's time to water your terrarium. The first variable to consider is what type of lid do you have on your terrarium? There's a lot of different lids that we have in the store here. You know, we got screw-on lids, we got cork lids, we got what I would consider a loose-fitting lid, or even medical glass, which is a perfectly airtight seal. So anything like this, which is completely sealed, or cork, or a screw-on lid, where there's not really any airflow getting in and out, those types of terrariums, because there's no airflow getting in and out, can be watered once a year to potentially even longer. As long as the air isn't evaporating and drying out, it continues to recycle itself over and over and over. So when the plants and the soil and the moss are done with the water, when they push the water back out, instead of evaporating in the sky, it essentially catches along the edges of the glass here. Like you can see all this condensation, which is a really good sign. And when it gets heavy enough, it basically just rains back down. So it just drips back down onto the soil, essentially raining on itself. And when you have an airtight seal, that water will never evaporate for the most part. So if you keep it closed, you could theoretically go years without watering it. You might have seen a picture on social media in the past. If you just type in like world's longest terrarium, it's like 60 plus years since it's been watered. However, if you have a lid like this, a loose fitting lid where airflow can still get in and out, this guy will get watered potentially every 3 to 4 months. It really just depends on how loose this lid is. So some might be 2 months, some might be 4 months, all depends on how much airflow is getting in. But what you should look for, there's two things. One, the color of the soil. If we look at the soil here, we notice it's a lighter brown, it looks a little looser, it looks a little drier, and we actually don't see any condensation on here, versus a terrarium like this where we see plenty of condensation up on the lid. The soil's a nice dark brown soil. We can tell it's nice and saturated. So something like that, we know this doesn't need to be watered, where a lid like this, this could probably use a little bit of water. So the trick to watering these terrariums and how to know if you've added enough water is take a spray bottle. You know, we use one of these heavy duty ones, but you don't need anything like this. And what you're gonna wanna do is spray along the edges of the glass here in a 360, and we're gonna watch the water funnel down the glass, and as soon as it touches the soil, you'll notice that it immediately turns to a dark brown, and what we're gonna do is continue rotating it until we got about 90% of that soil dark brown. So try to show you right here. See, as soon as that water touches it, it turns to a dark brown. So what we're gonna do is just spray along the edges of the glass here, kind of rotating in a circle. A little hard to do this with one hand, but we're just going to water along the glass, let it funnel down. Like I said, we're going to go until about 90% of that soil is dark brown. And the reason we're going along the edges of the glass is because we want to watch that soil change so we know if we've added enough. So just spraying a little bit along the edges of the glass here. And this should be about every 3 months or so, give or take, but it's really important for you guys to study the color of the soil and the amount of condensation. And then I just hit it with a little mist because it always looks a little better when it's wet and damp. So if you can tell, the soil's a nice dark brown now. I could add a little bit more, but this is looking a lot better. Then I'm gonna pop that lid back on, and that's gonna be good for the next couple of months. So there's a lot of variables to consider. Watering a terrarium is definitely more of an art than a science. It's no hard rule of add a 1/4 cup of water every 90 days or so, because the reality is every terrarium is a little bit different. You might put more moss, more soil, more plants, might get more light than others. So there's a lot of variables that affect when it's time to water the terrarium. But if you can get comfortable knowing the color of the soil, a saturated and dark brown soil is always better than a light brown and dry soil. And then the amount of condensation on there. Those are really your two biggest variables to look for. So I hope that helps. Call, text, email us with any questions. Always happy to help out however we can, but knowing when to water your terrarium and how to water it is definitely the biggest question that I get. And when I see terrariums come back for maintenance and repairs, it's typically because of underwatering or overwatering. And then also just keep in mind, these guys want to be in bright but indirect sun. So typically north and east facing windows is going to give you the best lighting. South and west, just too much direct sun overheats the terrariums. They're all tropical plants. They don't want to get too hot. So focus on north and east, and that should give you a great recipe for a healthy, happy terrarium. Call with any questions.